Hello, it's Stuart, the Unrepentant Atheist. Another clip. We're going back a few years now. And Doc is calling in from Pennsylvania. He's been speaking for, 15 minutes. And we've got to the crux of the conversation. Why do you believe? So let's go with it and listen to what he's got to say.
That you reject as well.
Right.
Then what's the reason for accepting any portion of this?
Well, there's only one reason, really, and that is because it makes you feel good, like you said, and
the problem.
That's remarkably honest. I like that. I do admire it when Christians tell me it makes you feel good. I find it comfortable to believe, therefore I believe. That's fine. Got no problem with that at all. I wouldn't do it myself, but at least it's honest.
It's comfortable.
I'm always baffled by people, and I'm not trying to hammer you on this point too much, Doc. For me, I care far more about whether something's true than whether it's comforting or makes me feel good, because there are lots of things that make me feel good, which are actually bad for me and bad for society, and if your reason for believing is that it makes you feel good, what if you believe things that make you feel good that are ultimately harmful to you and other people?
That you have to determine, and pretty much on an individual basis. And I've always contended that ethics or morality is situational. It depends on the situation.
Yeah, we're completely in agreement there. It's just that what is it? I guess what I need to find out, Doc, is if you could, as briefly as possible, because the show doesn't last for. What is it you believe, and what is it that makes you feel good about it?
Well, I first of all, I believe that there is a God, and I don't believe that. Because I don't have evidence or proof. I have had an experience many, many, many years ago that of the Holy Spirit that I couldn't explain any other way.
Okay.
And I figured if the Holy Spirit exists, then God must exist.
So you say you had an experience with the Holy Spirit that you couldn't explain any other way. The fact that you couldn't explain it any other way doesn't mean you've explained it.
No, it doesn't. But it was in a large auditorium with a lot of people there, and
me too.
I didn't get to talk to anybody else about it, but I did.
You had an experience.
I had this on tape.
You had an experience, and when it was over, you the only thing you were left with was that must have been the Holy Spirit. That's what you're saying,
right?
Yeah,
right.
The thing is, I've had an experience that at the time I was convinced the only explanation could be the Holy Spirit. And then later on I realized that's not an explanation, and I had no good reason to put forth that as even a candidate explanation. It is one of those things where I don't know what this is, but people around me have had similar experiences and they say it's the Holy Spirit, so I'll go with that. And eventually when I decided that I cared more about whether something was true than whether it felt good, I had to realize that the experiences that I had previously attributed to the Holy Spirit were experiences for which I either didn't have an explanation, still don't, or for which there's a mundane explanation that, when you have a whole bunch of people standing there singing and praising and you feel euphoric and goosebumps, that this is playing into things that we as human beings experience. It's not just religious music or religious experiences that make us feel like that. We can have that from secular music and from drugs and, all sorts of things.
Doc, was that the context of when you had this experience?
Well, there was no music. It was part of a service. Okay. But there was no music at the time. Actually, when the entire disturbance started, everything else stopped, and everybody was listening to what was happening, what was going on. And when it finally did settle down, a girl stood up and sang something in a language I don't recognize, so I assume it was singing in tongues, and then she sang the translation. So,
well, see, now that's weird.
Sort of fits.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that if you recorded that girl singing whatever she was singing, and then the next day you asked her to sing exactly the same song in the tongues, and you compared the two side by side, they'd be completely different. I think somebody should do that test. I'm convinced it's just random nonsense syllables.
That sort of fits.
Hey, Doc, how do you know she translated it right?
I don't. All I do is I could go back to the tape and listen to it if I.
Well, she wouldn't have even translated it. She would have, or at least I believe that she would have most likely have pre-prepared it. And as I said, if she sings the next song 10 days in a row, I believe every single one would be different. If that test could be carried out, I think that's highly probable.
If I could get a hold of it. But
the thing is, so as soon as we get into glossolalia, so the speaking in tongues, there's a couple different schools here. One is that it's a language that you cannot understand, which means she couldn't have sung a translation. And then the other one is this notion that people could potentially translate it. The problem with the second one is that you can test that. You can ask people to translate again. You can ask people, if there's some understanding there, then we can test for what this language is, and we can potentially reconstruct it because we understand how language works.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what you're saying is something happened, somebody babbled, and then they told you what the babbling meant.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. And let me
that sounds more Islamic than anything coming out of the Christian world.
tell you what that means. You do not have a sound epistemological foundation.
Well, I think it's quite possible. It's not so much the words. It may well be that this girl and her voice and the way that she was singing, she put a lot of heart into it and a lot of feeling. That might well be the thing that touched him and that he believed was the Holy Spirit.
And to accept my explanation as if it was a translation.
That's correct. I agree. So...
and I appreciate that, Doc, but you're only agreeing after I'm pointing this out, and yet I bet if I asked you tomorrow, are you convinced that you had an experience with the Holy Spirit, you would still say yes.
Yeah, I would, because that's what it felt like. And
how do you know what an experience with the Holy Spirit feels like?
I don't.
Okay.
So there's an episode of Blackadder that has a line in it that is my favorite to apply in this situation. And Blackadder's standing there, and Percy is talking about the eyes of the so and so and how blue they are, and they say that they are bluer than the blue stone of Galveston or whatever. I'm going to butcher it. And at the end of this long thing, it turns out that Percy's never seen the Infanta's eyes, and he's never seen the Stone of Galveston. And so Blackadder looks at him and says, so what you're saying is that something you've never seen is slightly less blue than something else you've never seen. This is what you're doing.
And all Christians do it with personal experiences, because when you ask them, why do you believe? They say, well, I had a personal experience. What was your personal experience? I felt something, and it felt to me like God. How do they know they must have had a previous experience to know what God feels like, but they haven't, because this is their first experience. It doesn't add up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, the character that plays Blackadder,
Rowan Atkinson.
What's his name?
Rowan Atkinson. Yeah.
He did a sequence on where he played a pastor.
Yeah, he did a lot of stand-up in that. He's an atheist, by the way.
Yeah, he did a lot of stand-up on that, and he did one sequence, and he did this sequence where he did the opening speech at a convention. And he's basically saying God is mysterious, and we shouldn't question him.
This is absolutely hilarious. I don't know whether he understands Rowan Atkinson's humor, but every time I've seen Rowan Atkinson impersonating a priest, it's full of kind of irony and sarcasm. And yes, he is an atheist, but I just find it hilarious that this Christian is phoning in and using Rowan Atkinson's comic routine to make some kind of theological point in support of the God he believes in.
So, you know, what I don't know what else I can say about this.
I would think that it would be fair to also potentially point out that when he's doing that in a comic vein, that he's being a little satirical and pointing out the absurdity
Possibly.
of writing something off as a mystery and then saying you shouldn't question it.
Yeah.
Right. I agree.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I don't know if we made any progress or not.
Oh, it's amazing. He agrees. He agrees that he couldn't possibly have known what the Holy Spirit is like. He agrees that he only believes in his religion because it makes him feel good and it's comfortable. He agrees that Rowan Atkinson was doing a satire piece. He agrees on all these things, and yet he still believes, and he's still a Christian, and he will be tomorrow and the day after, no doubt. Okay, so I've skipped 4 minutes of the conversation because he came back to the slavery topic, which Matt had already thoroughly dealt with. And he's using the same old argument, well, it was that culture in those days, you know, people did own slaves, so God had got to provide them with rules. So we're just coming to the end now, and I would urge you to stay on right to the end because there's a slightly controversial thing that happens near the end.
Well, other than what I said about the experience,
Other than having an
that's-
experience from the Holy Spirit, which you also acknowledge you can't identify was from a Holy Spirit.
The only reason I could identify as from that it was from the Holy Spirit was that I was there and I pretty much knew what was happening.
You knew what was expected of you. Because when you go to these events, there is an expectation. And so you met the expectation.
Yeah, I mean, earlier I asked you how you could tell whether or not the experience was actually from the Holy Spirit, and you acknowledged that you couldn't. You have no idea what an experience.
Time, yeah. Yeah.
So we're kind of stuck. I think probably it's good to stick a pin in it. You go off and think. I'll go off and think, and then you can call back. And yeah, you can also call in to talk heathen and other stuff.
Well, that's a nice way to end the call, isn't it?
I will try. Oh, by the way, I do like the
you should have quit while you were ahead. Listen to this, guys.
one girl that is on. Well, she's primarily on Talk Heathen. I've seen her once in a while as a co-host. She's a young girl. She's an astrophysicist, or studying to be an astrophysicist. I don't know if you know who I mean.
Yeah, they are non-binary, so don't
EJ.
call them. Yeah, don't call them a girl.
EJ's not her.
Yeah,
EJ is they.
Yeah, she.
No,
they.
not she.
I
not
got
she.
that bit.
They. EJ
You bigot! How dare you!
is non-binary.
I got that.
Okay.
And I'm still struggling with that one too.
I get it. That's why we're correcting. We're not trying to hammer you. We're just
Just trying to hammer you.
trying to make sure that somebody we know is represented the way they would prefer to be known.
Okay, well, I think he'll remember. I really do.
Yeah, I get you there.
Anyway,
But, I can only go what comes off the top of my head. So that's.
I get that. I think we reached that conclusion just earlier. But I'm going to let you go, and we're going to take some other calls. Thanks, Doc.
Okay, so people should understand if somebody looks like a girl and talks like a girl, it doesn't mean they're a girl. There might be something else, and I think Doc probably understands that now. So it's a they, it's not a she. That's all for now. Let me know what you thought about that, particularly the ending, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye for now.